Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham's impending departure from the Indiana Fever marks more than a shift in the roster. It's the price of a critical digital error. The team's accidental leak of its protected player list just days before the WNBA expansion draft wasn't just poor timing. It exposed the inner workings of a franchise under pressure and handed the Golden State Valkyries a ready-made roadmap. With the league watching and fans in disbelief, the moment quickly escalated from a tech slip-up to a defining moment of dysfunction.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
As the Valkyries now position themselves as the league's most analytically savvy and well-funded franchise, the Fever are left exposed, strategically and emotionally. Stephanie White's confirmation adds salt to the wound, signaling a reset that few saw coming this soon. It's not just about roster moves. It's about trust lost, value diminished, and the psychological fallout across the league. For the WNBA, this incident is no longer about one team's misstep. It's a glaring reminder of how vulnerable modern sports have become to digital chaos. This wasn't just a leak. This was a full-on franchise-level implosion. And at the center of it all, Stephanie White, standing in front of the media, confirming the one thing no Indiana Fever fan wanted to hear. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham won't be returning next season. No walk back, no soft language, just a clean, clinical confirmation that the two biggest names attached to the team's identity are gone. Not traded, not injured, gone. And the timing? Right after the team's biggest strategic blunder in years leaked all over social media. This wasn't an isolated issue. It was a symptom of a deeper failure. Organizational chaos that managed to collide with one of the most pivotal moments in recent WNBA history, the expansion draft. And the stakes? They couldn't be higher. The Indiana Fever were already under a microscope. Caitlin Clark's arrival turned a struggling franchise into the center of the women's basketball universe. Her draft broke viewership records. Her jersey sales exploded. The buzz surrounding her WNBA debut gave the entire league a boost. She was supposed to be the turning point, the headline, the future. Then came the leak. A social media post. Not a rumor, not a speculative tweet, but a published, internal roster decision, detailing which players the Fever intended to protect, which players they were effectively locking in, and by omission, which ones they were willing to leave exposed to the expansion draft. That post should never have gone public, but it did. And once it did, the fallout started immediately. Fans zoomed in on the list and immediately noticed the name that wasn't there. Grace Berger, one of the team's most promising young players. A rising guard who, according to scouts, has the same kind of upside as Courtney Vandersloot. Left unprotected. The reaction? Furious. Confused. Loud. Why would you leave someone like that open to be picked off? The theories started flying. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was misdirection. Maybe there was a last-minute trade coming. But when the Fever went silent, the speculation turned into outrage. Then the confirmations started rolling in. And then came the bombshell. Clark and Cunningham won't return. The connection between the leak and the departures wasn't spelled out. But the timeline? Damning. This wasn't just a case of miscommunication. It was a franchise getting caught with its strategic pants down and choosing to double down instead of cleaning up. Let's be clear about what this means. Caitlin Clark was more than a top draft pick. She was the spark of national relevance for the Fever. Her college run turned casual fans into devoted ones. She drew media attention the WNBA desperately needed. And the Fever had her. And now they don't. Whether it was her decision or the franchise's call, the optics are bad. Really bad. Then there's Sophie Cunningham, known for her toughness, leadership, and presence. Her departure means the locker room just lost one of its only experienced anchors. She was the bridge between the old Fever and the new vision. Without her, who's left to carry the culture? The worst part is how all of this played out in real time, with zero preparation. A leak this close to the protection deadline didn't just give rival teams a peek into the Fever's thinking. It gave them a head start. And the team best positioned to take advantage? The Golden State Valkyries. Let's talk about them. This isn't just a typical expansion team. The Valkyries have been quietly preparing for this draft with Silicon Valley funding, elite data analytics, and more strategic planning than most franchises see in 5 years. They're built to disrupt, and the Fever just handed them a blueprint. With the leak, the Valkyries now know exactly where Indiana's soft spots are. They know who's exposed. They know who's vulnerable. And, thanks to the timing, they've had more than enough time to build their picks around that intel. That kind of competitive edge? Unprecedented. It's not cheating, but it's not fair either. And the Fever have no one to blame but themselves. And it gets worse. This leak didn't just impact draft strategy. It triggered a wave of instability across the league. Teams started second-guessing their own protection lists. Players started wondering if their names would be exposed next. Internal trust shaken. And in an environment where chemistry matters as much as talent, that kind of disruption is poison. Reports started surfacing about locker room tensions. Players who were once chatting openly were now going silent. More and more team meetings were happening behind closed doors. Players pulled their agents into late-night calls. Confidence shot. Morale low. Because here's the truth no one likes to admit. Being unprotected in a draft isn't just a strategic move. It's personal. It tells a player, you're not part of the future. And when that gets blasted online, the damage is immediate. Grace Berger, once hyped as a key building block, suddenly found herself trending for all the wrong reasons. Scouts were reaching out. International teams were watching. European clubs smelled opportunity. And now, there's very real talk that Grace may not stick around to see how this plays out. That's what happens when a franchise loses control of its narrative. The Fever went from trending for all the right reasons. Clark's debut, record sales, renewed hype, to trending because they accidentally leaked their entire protection plan, alienated young stars, and lost their two biggest names in a matter of days. And behind all of it, a broken process. Where was the digital security? Where was the internal check system? Where was the second set of eyes before a post like that went live? Because this wasn't just a PR slip-up. This was a strategic disaster. And now, the league is scrambling to clean up the mess before it sets a precedent for future failures. There are already calls for league-wide reform, tightened social media protocols, approval workflows, encrypted data sharing, and mandatory digital literacy for every team. Because in an era where a tweet can dismantle a draft board, silence isn't a fix. It's a liability. The WNBA is on the verge of something bigger. TV deals, increased salary caps, global expansion. And this kind of chaos threatens all of it. Sponsors are watching. Broadcasters are watching. Fans, they're already making noise. Petitions have popped up demanding answers. Local businesses, which rely on Fever games to bring in foot traffic, are worried about ticket renewals. Everyone's wondering, if this is how the Fever manage their roster, what else are they mishandling? And let's not forget what's happening behind the scenes. With Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham gone, the Fever's core is gutted. Trades might be on the table. Emergency signings. Last-minute pivots. All under the glare of a public that no longer trusts what the franchise is selling. There's no way to spin this into a win. The Fever leaked their own strategy. They exposed their own weaknesses. They lost their biggest star before she could make a full season impact. And now, the expansion draft they should have been preparing for is shaping up to be their undoing. The Golden State Valkyries are coming into the league with power, data, and now, a playbook handed to them by their own competition. This should have been a celebration of growth and new opportunities for the WNBA. Instead, it's a crisis. One that'll be studied in sports management programs for years. This is what happens when a franchise ignores the basics. Protect your players, protect your plans, protect your process. The Fever failed at all three. Now, they have to live with the consequences. And for everyone else watching, this is your warning. The digital age doesn't forgive mistakes. It magnifies them. What do you think? Is this the start of a bigger shakeup in the WNBA? Can the Fever rebuild their credibility? Or did this leak just seal their fate for seasons to come? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit that subscribe button, because if this is how the offseason is going, the regular season is going to be a storm. Right now, the Indiana Fever aren't just playing defense on the court. They're playing defense off it in front of cameras, microphones, and an entire league that's watching their every move like it's a live reality show. And to be brutally honest, they're losing. We're talking about a franchise that had everything lined up: a once-in-a-generation rookie in Caitlin Clark, a resurgent fan base, an actual bump in market value, and national attention pouring in from outlets that previously gave the WNBA little more than a passing glance. They had momentum, they had public goodwill, and they blew it. One leaked post, one exposed strategy, unraveled months of planning. But what's worse is how the aftermath has played out. The silence, the lack of transparency, the sudden confirmation that not only is Grace Berger likely on the chopping block, but Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham are officially out. Just like that. Gone. No heartfelt goodbye. No video montage. No attempt at saving face. It's like they're hoping people will just move on and forget. But in 2025, in a digital-first league era where every fan is an analyst and every post gets screenshotted in seconds, no one forgets. The receipts are eternal. Let's not sugarcoat what Caitlin Clark represented for Indiana. She was more than a rookie. She was a franchise reset button. She wasn't just drafted, she was anointed. The league's golden child. A ratings magnet. A guaranteed headline. Her college career had ESPN salivating. And the second she went pro, Indiana's profile skyrocketed. Then came the protection list leak, which somehow, inexplicably, did not include Grace Berger. The backlash wasn't just loud, it was immediate. Grace isn't a benchwarmer. She's a rising star. She has court vision, mid-range consistency, and defensive grit that coaches build rosters around. So, when fans saw she was unprotected, it didn't read as strategy, it read as incompetence. That one decision changed the narrative overnight. And the silence that followed, even louder, it created a vacuum. And in that vacuum, the worst-case scenarios began to build. Was the front office crumbling? Were players unhappy? Was there a trade in the works? Were they tanking on purpose? Then Stephanie White steps in with the quote that hit like a slap across Fever Nation's face. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham will not be returning next season. No, we're exploring options. No, still in discussion. Just flat-out confirmation. Now the speculation isn't about trades, it's about trust. Not just between fans and the front office, but between players and the organization. Because when a team leaks a strategy, fumbles the response, and loses its brightest stars in the aftermath, you're not dealing with a PR issue anymore. You're dealing with institutional failure. And don't forget what this means for the Golden State Valkyries. With that leaked list in hand, they can approach the expansion draft like a sniper, clean, calculated, surgical. They're backed by analytics, venture capital, and a front office with no baggage. No internal drama. No messy transitions. They are walking into the WNBA with a major competitive advantage. And it's all because one of the most historic franchises in the league couldn't manage a password. Let that sink in. The Valkyries didn't break the rules. They didn't steal information. They didn't hack into systems. They just sat back, took notes, and capitalized on another team's self-inflicted wound. And now they'll walk into this draft with the kind of intel that scouts spend years compiling. That's not a coincidence. That's a power shift. And the WNBA? It's already starting to feel the tremors. Players across the league are suddenly aware of how exposed they are, not just physically, but strategically. One leak in your future is up for public debate. There are stories surfacing of agents fielding international offers, of players reaching out to rivals for clarity, of coaches trying to patch morale with vague promises about loyalty. It's not working. The league is off balance. And Caitlin Clark being out? That tipped the scales even further. We still don't know why she's not returning. But given the timing, the silence, and the context, it's safe to assume this wasn't a clean break. Whether it's contract disputes, organizational concerns, or a personal choice, Clark walking away from a team that sold itself on her arrival is devastating. Because with Clark gone, so goes the Fever's future as a powerhouse in the making. So goes the buzz. The tickets surge. The national spotlight. What's left? A team scrambling for relevance, hoping its front office can rebuild trust after letting it crumble in real time. And what about Sophie Cunningham? The veteran presence. The one with the edge, the leadership, the hustle. She wasn't just a role player. She was the glue. You don't just lose a player like that and call it a fresh start. You call it what it is, a regression. Now the Indiana Fever are heading into an expansion draft with half their fan base furious, their biggest assets walking away, and their front office under league-wide scrutiny. It's not a reset. It's a meltdown. The league, to its credit, is already fielding suggestions for better digital security. Talk of multi-level approval protocols, encrypted communications, and even third-party audit systems is making the rounds. But that's all too little, too late for Indiana. This mess is theirs to own. And they're not just losing players, they're losing leverage. Merch sales? Dipping. Local partnerships? At risk. Sponsors? Waiting to see what happens next. The buzz that surrounded Clark's draft is turning into static. And let's not pretend this only impacts Indiana. Every other team is watching how this unfolds, watching how fans react, watching how the league steps in, and most importantly, watching to see whether players start asking for opt-outs or short-term deals to avoid getting stuck in unstable franchises. Grace Berger's name is still floating on international scout lists. European teams have already expressed interest in Fever players. If Indiana doesn't get it together fast, they could lose not just this season, but the next few years of their rebuild. And the expansion draft hasn't even happened yet. That's the most brutal part. All this damage was done before the new franchise even made its picks. Before the first game. Before the Valkyries have stepped onto the court. One leak, one confirmation, and the entire structure of a team, and potentially the league, is now in flux. Stephanie White might have hoped that confirming Clark and Cunningham's departure would quiet the noise. Instead, it turned up the volume. Now the league has to answer to a growing chorus of fans asking how a franchise that was handed such a golden opportunity managed to drop the ball this hard. And the answer? There isn't one. Not yet. All we know is this. The Fever leaked their own playbook, exposed rising talent, lost the rookie who was supposed to carry the next era of the league, and let go of their veteran stabilizer, all in the same breath. You couldn't write a worse script if you tried. And now the Valkyries are in position to walk into the league not just as newcomers, but as legitimate threats, with access to data other teams would kill for, with talent practically gift-wrapped, with the confidence of a team that knows their competition is already flailing. At this point, it's not even about the expansion draft anymore. It's about trust. Trust in the process. Trust in leadership. Trust in the league's ability to protect its players. Not just physically on the court, but professionally and personally off it. And the Indiana Fever? They've shattered that trust. Caitlin Clark leaving before her first full season is even over? That's not just a blow to the Fever. It's a league-wide earthquake. She was the draw. The one with the crossover appeal, the headline machine, the reason casual fans suddenly knew what the WNBA even was. Her departure doesn't just hit Indiana. It guts the entire marketing pipeline that was supposed to carry the league into a new era. And Sophie Cunningham? A vet like that doesn't walk unless the writing's already been on the wall for a while. Which means whatever's been happening behind the scenes in Indiana didn't start with a social media leak. It only came to light because of it. Now we're all seeing what's been simmering under the surface. You can't spin this as a rebuild. You can't call it strategy. You don't throw away your two most high-profile players and leave a future star like Grace Berger exposed without there being serious dysfunction in the front office. And don't forget, every other team is watching this play out like it's a cautionary tale. You think other GMs aren't locking down their protection lists like Fort Knox right now? You think other players aren't quietly demanding their agents, making sure they're not next to be outed or forgotten in a spreadsheet gone viral? This whole thing has changed how players think about loyalty, about communication, about staying in one place long enough to build something. Because now, they've seen how fast it can all fall apart. One leaked list, one confirmation, one unraveling. And now, the Valkyries? They get to step into the league like it's a buffet. They've got intel, resources, and a front row seat to one of the most embarrassing moments in WNBA front office history. This was supposed to be a competitive draft, not a fire sale. The real damage isn't just the roster losses. It's the message it sends to every rising star, every young athlete watching this league closely. Even if you break records, even if you sell tickets, even if you carry a franchise on your back, your job security still lives and dies by internal leaks and executive silence. The Fever didn't just leak a list. They leaked confidence in the system. And now they got to live with the fallout. So how does this end? Is there even a comeback story here? Or has Indiana just written itself out of the contender conversation for good? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe. Because if this much drama can unfold before the first tip-off, you already know the season's about to be pure chaos. That's not how expansion drafts are supposed to work. The WNBA is standing at a crossroads. This moment was supposed to be a celebration of growth, stability, and future promise. Instead, it's a case study in what happens when you let internal chaos spill into the public eye. And it's a warning shot to every other team in the league. Secure your house before the walls come down. So what now? Does the Fever still have a plan? Can they rebuild what's already been exposed? Can they keep Grace Berger, or is she the next name to walk out? Will the Valkyries dominate off intel alone, or will the league step in to level the playing field? One thing's for sure, this story isn't going away. If the preseason has already delivered this much drama, you can bet the regular season is going to be absolute chaos.